How's it, everybody? Welcome back to Season 2 of Exponential Africa Live, a weekly live show that focuses on bringing the best thought leadership, technology and innovation to the African continent and the world. A few weeks ago, in the midst of our South African lockdown, government announced that load shedding will start again, and we'll be having sporadic and ongoing load shedding for most of the country. I thought, how can we do this? Deal with this pandemic crisis, working from home, and now no power. It was a very gloomy day for us for a few days, and there was no light ahead. And then about 2 weeks ago, I read an article that Eskom has embraced consultants from overseas, and we have managed to solve some of the very pressing challenges, and it's announced that there's no more load shedding has stopped. A miracle that we received help from outside sources and that we solved this problem so quickly. However, this is not over, and this is a very slippery slope that we're facing. We may not have load shedding right now, but we have a very long way to go before we reach energy abundance in South Africa, and we really have to think differently. And I'm so excited that for the next 10 weeks, we'll be gracing you with some of the most cutting-edge news stories, top thought leadership from around the world, and all of them sharing their views on how we can create a better, smarter, more abundant and open world. Especially now because of COVID-19 and these harsh realities that we're facing, we really have to share these views. So thank you all for watching and supporting us. Today is also a special day because it's Shane Mann's birthday. From all of us at Mann and SingularityU South Africa, happy birthday, Shane. We wish you a great day, and it's great to be kicking off Season 2 on your birthday. We believe that the future unfolds depending on how we create it, and that every single one of us has the power to positively impact the world and make it more abundant and democratise for all. If we can expose you to a different way of thinking and allow people to embrace exponential tech and a mindset, that we can really make a big impact and a big difference. Our mission as Singularity South Africa and Man-Made is to help #future-proof Africa by building a global community of change makers who can help solve some of Africa's and the world's greatest challenges to lead the way into the future. We do this through various educational experiences that educate, empower and inspire, and by building our community and network. Tonight we'll be covering energy made in Africa with some of the latest developments in the field, and why we think that now is the right time to re-engineer the way we manufacture, produce and consume energy. Thanks to technology, there are new ways to generate energy and rethink the distribution models from centralized to decentralized. An energy miracle is coming, and it's going to change the world, and if it does, we could have cheaper energy with no CO2 emissions. I love this quote from Bill Gates, and we are praying and hoping for that miracle. Tonight we have Ramez Naam, SingularityU Energy and Environment Faculty and Clean Energy Investor, Michael Hayink, co-founder and CEO of Yellow, a solar company that is disrupting energy in Africa, and Arash Azami, SingularityU Netherlands Faculty on Energy and founder of Come Gear, an energy company that is focused on creating the Internet of Energy. A very special thanks goes out to our partners, who this would not be possible without, our collaboration partner, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, our global partner Deloitte, and our strategic partner MTN. Thank you for your commitment and dedication, as always, to making a positive impact in our country and across Africa. Lastly, if you want to keep learning about exponential technologies and thought leadership, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page, click the bell to get notified when we go live, and if you register on the website, you'll get more information and be eligible for the giveaways and be able to add the event to your calendar. Keep sending us ideas for future shows and feedback on how we can get better. We really are so grateful for the feedback so far. Keep it coming. Andy from LA, thank you for your feedback last week. We will keep these shows coming. And thank you for watching, subscribing and engaging with us. Power. Let's get energized. Here are a few tech-based stories and the latest renewable energy updates. We've gathered the most exponential stories from around the world so that you don't have to. COVID-19 highlights need for renewable energy in Africa. Things are heating up in the renewable energy sector as Africa is forced to look at developing flexible energy systems. South African electricity demand reduced by around 7,500 megawatts in March and April, but demand is now steadily increasing. Considering that many African countries entered the crisis with a shortfall, drastic measures are necessary, and that's where renewable power comes in. The continent already has great case studies. Take Nigeria, for example. Their electricity self-generation market is 55% larger than the main grid. Now that's fuel for thought. Apple's commitment to going green is far from running out of steam. Apple is carbon neutral and has set the goal to create carbon neutral products by 2030. To follow up on that commitment, California-based manufacturer of engineered materials, thermal management and environmental sealing solutions, Boyd Corporation, has committed to using 100% renewable energy to make products for Apple Inc. Now how do you like them apples? GE will 3D print the bases of wind turbines, taller than Seattle's Space Needle. GE is working with partners Cobod and Lafarge Holcim to engineer giant 3D printers that can print concrete turbine bases on site. Jinko Solar's solar cells set record high efficiency of 24.79%. Jinko Solar's R&D teams of experts in silicon wafer, solar cells and solar modules have made significant breakthroughs in the field of higher efficiency and higher power of cells. The Chinese manufacturer has claimed a world record of 24.79% for a large size contact passivated solar cell, for all your solar experts out there. And while we're on the subject of breaking records, there's a new record crushing battery that lasts 2 million kilometers. Chinese company Contemporary Amperex Technology has a new battery technology that could revolutionize the electric vehicle market. CATL says it has developed a power pack that can last up to 16 years or a distance of 2 million kilometers. And speaking of travel, the global deep space exploration era is cranking up, so to speak. It is indeed a global era of deep space exploration, as Chinese spacecraft Tianwen-1 successfully launched this week. Destination? Mars. This is the country's first attempt to land on the red planet. Tianwen-1 is one of 3 daring missions to Mars this year. The UAE launched its Hope orbiter last week, and the United States craft, a 6-wheeled rover named Perseverance, is likely to launch next week. Robotic chemist does over 600 experiments a week and learns from its own work. Researchers from the University of Liverpool have created a mobile robot to carry out experiments using standard lab equipment designed for humans. What's special about this mad scientist is that it makes decisions on the fly about what experiments to perform next on its previous results. Carbon footprint is now in VR. Fancy experiencing your impact on the planet in VR? Well, the UN Environment Programme has teamed up with Sony PlayStation platform Dreams to create an immersive virtual reality experience about climate change. A GoPro for Beatles is now a thing. Researchers at the University of Washington have developed a tiny wireless steerable camera that can ride aboard an insect, giving everyone a chance to see an Ant-Man view of the world. For this week's African Innovation Spotlight, we're going to be showcasing a company that is disrupting energy and energy distribution across Africa. We all know that the stats regarding electricity in the homes of Africans is staggeringly low. This chronic lack of power is holding back Africa's young and ambitious people. Just as Africa leapfrogged the landline phone and went straight to cell phones, so the same will happen with energy. Distributed renewable energy solutions like solar home systems can be deployed at a scale and cost that a centralized grid cannot keep up with anymore. The challenge of enabling this distributed energy revolution is a challenge of retail distribution, and that's where Yellow is solving this problem. Yellow is a digital platform enabling entrepreneurs all over rural Africa to become solar agents. With a network of over 200 agents, it's no wonder that communities are seeing real empowerment. Through the use of small solar home systems and access via smartphones, electricity is more accessible. Their pay-as-you-go solar home system offers up to 20 times more power than the same spend on available substitutes like battery torches and candles. They offer upgradable solutions so that energy-level solar home systems are just the start. The payment track record that customers create enable extended families and communities to unlock larger systems with more energy, powering more useful applications. And the gamification of electricity is truly revolutionary. And we're so excited to see how this develops and changes the game as energy made in Africa. Time to move into the main part of tonight's show, the Energy Made in Africa panel. In Africa, we have an abundance of sunlight to power our solar future because every 5 days the sun provides the earth with as much energy as all proven suppliers of oil, coal and natural gas. And how can we create new clean energy solutions for South Africa and Africa by thinking differently? We need new ways to manufacture and produce energy and create an internet of energy, as we're going to hear from Arash, so that we can develop a new market for energy that will democratize the industry and create a flourishing new energy economy. Tonight, we have Ramez Naam, Arash Azami, and Marco Haing. Let's start with Ramez. Ramez is the Chair for Energy and Environment at Singularity University. He is also a former Microsoft executive and innovation expert. Over the last decade, he's become a clean energy thought leader, speaker, and investor. Ramez, how are you doing? Are you good?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
All good. Thanks for joining us there in Seattle.
It's a pleasure.
And Ramez, I mean, you've been studying energy on a global scale, and you've come to South Africa quite a number of times, and you know the energy crisis that we're going through. What are your thoughts on where energy is at the moment from a global perspective, firstly, especially since COVID? And then where do you think we're going in South Africa at the moment, and what can we do?
Well, COVID has definitely caused a hit to energy consumption around the world, certainly for oil more than anything else, but also for power. But I still believe that the way for South Africa to get out of its energy crisis is through growth. South Africa has some of the best sun and best wind on planet Earth, and that means South Africa can have some of the cheapest clean electricity on planet Earth, and that could give South Africa an advantage in manufacturing and other energy-intensive industries, attract more industry, create more jobs, and increase demand for electricity, which would help Eskom grow its way out of its debt problems.
And I mean, are you seeing a big rise in these renewable energies since COVID?
Well, what's happened is that COVID has really hit fossil fuels, and it's hit renewables, but tremendously less. So in automotive, for instance, we've seen the sales of vehicles overall around the world plummet, but the sales of internal combustion engine cars have fallen relatively by 4 or 5 times as much as the sales of electric cars. In the electricity sector, we've seen in most of the world, South Africa is not the same, but in most of the world, we've seen coal plummet while solar and wind have been effectively unaffected. And that's partially as a policy, but it's also because once you've built a solar or wind farm, it doesn't cost anything to keep it running, where the coal plant requires fuel. Now, South Africa has made some different choices and unwise choices on that to keep the coal plants running and not pay solar and wind in some cases, which I think is backwards. But globally, what we're seeing is that COVID is hitting fossil fuels badly and leaving clean energy relatively unscathed.
So interesting, and I also think it's not only about the technology. It's what can you comment on what Michael and Arash are doing. I know you are an advisor to Yellow Solar.
Yeah. Well, I think what we see is that around the world, it wasn't just making solar and wind cheap that led to their spread. It was often finding a way to financially engineer things so that people could afford them and could afford them out of pocket and sort of be cash flow positive. If you think about solar panels, solar power for a business, for a large home, or for somebody off grid, it's all capital cost upfront, but then it saves you money over time. They don't have any fuel costs. But so companies like Yellow are essential in finding a way to make that affordable from day one, instead of having to have the consumer spend a lot of money on day one and only get recouped over a period of months or years. So that sort of business model change and financing change has been essential around the world. And I think Yellow is quite brilliant in finding new ways to do that.
No, thanks so much for that. And on that note, we're going to move over to Michael Hayink from Yellow, and we'll be catching up with you on the panel in just a moment. Let me introduce Michael Hayink. He is the co-founder at Yellow, a digital retail platform focused on delivering consumer products like solar home systems to consumers in Africa. Mark is passionate about the role that digital business models can enable the 600 million people in Africa who live without electricity to get access to it, and the opportunities that it affords. Prior to Yellow, Mark worked in private equity, focusing on investments in renewable energy in Africa. Mark, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Thanks, Mick. Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for the intro.
Awesome. And I mean, we just saw the African Innovation Spotlights on your company. And do you want to just tell us a little bit more about your journey and how Yellow actually works?
Yeah, sure, Mick. So I think your spotlight did a good job, but essentially the problem we're trying to tackle is what's happening in the rest of Africa. South Africa is a bit of an outlier, but in the rest of Africa, about 60% of households don't have access to electricity, and where we operate in Malawi and Uganda, it's between 80 and 90%. And a very interesting thing has happened in the last decade or so. The technologies that have been driven by demand in the rest of the world for solar PV and batteries and LEDs and these sorts of technologies have started a revolution of distributed energy in Africa, and that's now also being enabled by mobile pay-as-you-go and mobile money payment platforms. This essentially allows companies like ourselves, as Ramez said, to finance consumers, allowing them to get electricity in their homes for the first time, and at affordable rates, so roughly similar to what they're paying for candles and charging their phones at trading centers.
I mean, that's absolutely unbelievable. Just in terms of somebody can buy one of your panels for what, $5, or how does the rental model work?
Yeah, exactly. So roughly $5 or so a month, and after 24 months, the customer then takes ownership of that system, and then they have free electricity, which is pretty revolutionary. It's about 20 times more power than the customer has access to prior to having the system, at roughly the same cost. So the trick is you touched on the distribution, and that's really the key here. So the technologies have existed for some time, and what we found, the real challenge is how to actually get that system to the customer at a price that they can afford it. And we had, a number of fairly comical events in starting the company. A lot of time spent sitting under the trees, chatting to chiefs and discussing the benefits of solar power, and a lot of false starts. The interesting thing, I suppose, as it relates to the rest of Singularity and the technologies that you often speak about, is that what we've found to be the breakthrough for us is really in a digital business model and enabling a network of agents through technology to sell these systems and to service our customers, at this kind of price point.
Yeah, so I just very briefly, let's touch on that, because that's really interesting on how you've gamified and this new type, and you've created almost like a new business model for this business. Because how does it work? You make a test, people sign up, pass the test, they get to become a sales agent, and then in order to get your salary, you get points throughout the month.
Yeah, that's broadly it. I mean, to be honest, we're the beneficiaries of having lived in South Africa and watched Discovery do some amazing things, disrupting the market in insurance in South Africa. And they've gamified, South Africans all know they've gamified that industry in a very innovative and clever way. And we've borrowed a lot of those concepts, essentially by turning all of our operations into digital processes. Essentially every single thing that happens on the ground with our teams in Malawi and Uganda, that has enabled us to measure and track everything which goes on. But more than that, it's also enabled us to put in place incentives for each and every task which someone on the ground does, whether that's one of our team that's installing solar systems in households, or whether it's one of our team in the customer care department servicing our customers. By having that digital platform underneath, we're able to deliver incentives to all of those people to create a much more efficient way of doing business than the sort of traditional top-down business model, which is how we started.
It's just absolutely incredible. I think it's so exciting. Mez, do you want to comment on that, how you think this business model works quickly?
Yeah, well, I think it's fantastic. As Mike's saying, like, he's managed to reduce the cost of his channel by using digital tools to make it, to almost virtualize it. And I mean, Mike, do you want to say anything about exponential organizations and Salim's book and how that influenced your business?
Yeah, so Mez, the book Exponential Organizations, it was quite a turning point for us, really. I mean, it came at a time I'd spent about 8 months or so in Malawi trying to work on this opportunity in quite a sort of traditional way. And at that time, I flew back to South Africa and, after 8 months, made our first sale of one of our systems to the taxi driver on the way out to the airport. And it was really kind of tail between the legs stuff coming back to South Africa. And luckily, one of our investors was reading the book at the time and suggested, why don't we try some of these principles? And the principles of exponential organizations, in part, is to build a digital twin to essentially turn every physical operating process and create a digital twin of that, and then use that to run a really asset-light business model with really quick feedback loops to ensure that the organization keeps improving and keeps on getting the information that it needs from its customers as quickly as possible. And so really, we just sort of had the opportunity to tinker around with those principles, and slowly but surely, through originally a digital agent recruitment platform, then a platform to manage all of those agents, now a platform to manage our operations teams as well. We've built up a kind of overarching platform which really has changed the game for how we're able to get our product to customers.
I mean, I saw the back end of it, and I think it's just absolutely incredible how for every single task that you do, it's gamified, and there's a certain amount of points. And it's almost like you're an Uber driver. The more you work and the harder you work, the better it is for your own salary. So well done for that. I think we are going to move over to Arash now. Arash Azami, thanks so much. We've got you back. Arash Azami is the Singularity University faculty for the Netherlands on energy, as well as the founder of Common Gear, an R&D agency creating solutions for a quickly digitizing energy landscape. His main objective is to contribute to an internet of energy enabling users worldwide to download as well as upload energy from abundant renewable resources. Besides his work for Common Gear, he does a lot of work with the Singularity University Netherlands team, and he is also a mentor of social entrepreneurship at INSEAD Business School in Paris, and he advises the European Commission and the Dutch government on long-term strategies for energy and digitalization. Arash, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Wonderful to be with you guys and doing well. It's a very sunny day in the Netherlands, so I guess there's a lot of decentralized renewables production here also.
And I mean, you've got quite an interesting background. You grew up in Niger, West Africa, right?
I did, yeah.
And
yeah, I grew up in Niger in West Africa, so one of the French-speaking countries, one of the poorest countries as it used to be in Africa also, with a very low ratio of access to modern forms of energy. So today, only 14% of the people in Niger have access to electricity, for example. And that really has been one of the key factors that inspire me to do the work that I'm doing today.
So incredible. And I just love this concept of this Internet of Energy and what we can create in the future. Do you want to just give us a bit more of an explanation around the concept?
Yes, and the explanation is, I think it's very easy. I assume that everybody who is attending this webinar now is familiar with the internet. And the wonderful thing with the internet is that it changed the entire world in a span of just 30 years, because the www protocol was only written in 1989. And what it did was, as of the start of the internet, we are no longer knowledge consumers. We're no longer the end consumer of something, like reading a dictionary or an encyclopedia. Instead of that, we're all on Wikipedia, and what we know we can share with the rest of the world. So suddenly we're part of this distributed system where we are not only consumers, but we're prosumers. And what we're attempting to do with energy is actually exactly the same thing. So we're marking the end of the energy consumer. There's no longer an end station there. We're all parts of that same huge global interconnected system, and we all have something to offer, be it energy that we produce, but also balancing power. Also, everybody who has electrical appliances or electrical cars has some form of power to add to the system. And basically the idea is that every node is valuable, every connection is valuable.
It's incredible. I would love to be being able to produce my own energy, as well as share it and on-sell it to the community and to fellow South Africans. I think it's really, really a great concept. How long have you been working on this idea? And where are you in the process?
Oh man, it's been a journey with so many ups and downs. And so I started with the idea about 10 years ago, 2010. And I went on full time with it in 2015. And at that time, I was asked by the European Commission and by the Dutch government to write their digitalization agendas for energy. And I've been involved in the blockchain communities and in artificial intelligence communities. And it just dawned to me that the technologies that we have developed today, for the first time in history, are enabling us to actually create this global interconnected system where everybody is playing their part, but also where by design, it is 100% renewables based, and it's all about empowerment. So one of the protocols that we're working on now is it's like the www protocol for the internet, for the data internet. We're working on the PTTP protocol, which is a power transfer protocol, but it also stands for power to the people, because that's what it is about. It's about enabling and empowering people to add what they have to add to the entire system.
Wow, it's just so incredible. I think it's such an exciting space. Thanks so much for that. I think we're going to move into our main panel discussion, and we've got a number of questions that are popping in. Let's start with one from Cezele, and who is asking, care to touch on the capital outlay required for installing alternative energy infrastructure? It seems to provide a barrier, even though the long-term payout is significant. Mez, do you want to comment on that to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the business model comment that I was making is that often you want to hide the long-term payout. Often the consumer isn't going to make a change, energy efficiency, solar, anything like that, if they have to wait for a long-term payout. And that's because consumers are hyperbolic discounters. So if you say to a consumer, look, this will pay off in 5 years, and this will pay off in 3 years, do they want to expend this money and not have access to it and wait for that? Often they don't. And that's why companies like what Yellow is doing, or what Arash has done in previous efforts of his, that get financing to make it cash flow positive for the consumer or the business deploying it from the very beginning, increase deployment of these technologies so rapidly.
Awesome. Michael, what are your views on that?
Yeah, I think look, it's a good question, particularly because it kind of depends. In South Africa, for example, a lot of people would just look at a solar PV solution, to supplement the grid, and obviously the capital costs of solar PV on its own are much smaller than the capital costs of solar PV coupled with batteries, which is typically what's required, to power a system entirely off grid. I think that the great news is that the exponential improvement, or the learning curve that solar PV is on, and has been for some time, the same dynamic is happening in lithium-ion batteries and in many other battery technologies, primarily driven by, and Mez is the expert on this, but primarily driven by the demand for batteries in other applications, originally in consumer electronics and now in electric vehicles. So I think that, as Mez said, I mean, the key is getting the financial engineering right so that you do stretch these costs out for the duration of the time that the asset is producing the energy. But also the great news is that these costs are coming down at a really alarming rate. So we are, in the midst of a revolution, and I think it's happening a lot quicker than people might realize.
No, it's super exciting. And Arash, do you want to comment on this as well?
What we're looking at now is that it must have been around a century and a half ago that all of us in the world, energy-wise, got used to the idea that it is something that you have to produce centrally, put a price on it usually by a company, and then sell it, put margins on it, and then there will be a consumer. But prior to that, if we're looking at the history of mankind, prior to the Industrial Revolution, we have relied on 100% renewables. So whenever we refer to renewables as alternative energy, we're wrong. It's actually conventional. Alternative energy is the energy that we've used for about a century and a half and we're getting rid of right now, which is oil and coal and gas. So that's alternative, and conventional energy is renewable energy. But the big difference is that we have developed technologies over the past decades that are enabling us to make such better use of these abundant renewable resources, like the sun, like the wind, like geothermal heat, etc., that we are highly effective with them, that we're bringing the marginal production cost of a unit of energy very close to zero. So as of that moment, you're not paying for a unit of energy anymore. You are paying for energy, but you're paying for the fact that you're connected to a system and that there's assets that you'll have to pay off. But besides that, the marginal production cost is zero, which means that is truly liberating you, because energy is it's more fundamental than money in our economy. Because every single bit of value that we're creating in our lives is actually due to flows of energy and due to conversions of energy. And so by enabling people, by empowering people to have access to this fundamental force that is enabling them to build something out of their lives, and to bring these marginal production costs all the way to zero, is actually not only decentralizing energy or decentralizing the economy, but it is we're getting to a distributed society. So this is a very deep democratization path that we are following right now, and we cannot turn anymore. These are the cold hard facts that we're looking at right now. So yeah, the face of the world is changing, and this is also what makes me believe in Africa so much, because energy-wise, per capita, Africa is 2.5 times richer than Europe, for example. And so if you have access to 2.5 more times energy, that means that you can be 2.5 more times productive. That means that you can add 2.5 more times to the global economy. And by granting these accesses, I really believe that there's a very, very bright future for this beautiful continent.
No, thanks for that. It's so interesting. I never knew that comment about alternative energy and conventional energy, and that the renewables, the actual conventional. So that's super interesting. How do we bring this to South Africa? How do we, Mark? How do we, bring another yellow to South Africa? Or I'm sure there's a lot going on in solar. What's happening on the South African landscape in particular? And how do we
look? There's plenty happening in South Africa in the distributed space. There's some great companies, particularly focusing on the commercial sector. There's already a large fleet of commercial solar PV. The trick in South Africa, or the tough part at the moment, I suppose, is regulation. There's a number of regulations which are making it difficult for the private sector to do what they would be able to, just from a pure economic perspective. So I guess that's holding things back a little bit. But even on that front, it does look as though there's some progress in the pipeline.
Awesome. And just to follow up on that is a question from Patricia Gomez, who is asking, for how long does the solar system last? Your solar systems. Mm-hmm. How long do they last? And are there batteries incorporated? Because she has a follow-up question, is that the batteries are the most expensive part, correct?
Yeah, so our systems, the systems we sell, typically the battery on the smaller systems will last about 5 years, and the larger systems about 7 years. They do incorporate batteries, and they're lithium ion. And for our customers, the trick is really to get this product as low a cost as possible, so that they can make this migration from candles and kerosene lanterns to true electricity. And so really within the time frame of those systems, our customers, even before they give up, will already upgrade, because they don't just want light and phone charging, they want what we have as well. They want TV, they want access to the internet, they want access to opportunities, cooking, etc.
Yes, and we've got another question here from Martha Warren, who's asking, what are the recommendations for alternative energy sources in SA at this time? Mez, there's predicted load shedding could come back very soon. What can we do to sort of safeguard ourselves, getting our own sort of energy solution? Or going off
I think if you're a homeowner or a business owner, it is definitely solar, and you don't have to go off grid, but you can have solar as a backup to the grid to supplement should the grid be running badly. And then secondly, solar plus batteries.
Okay. Arash, do you want to comment on that as well?
The wonderful movement that we're seeing here is that just like with telecom and data, we're moving to the grid's edge. So we used to have the key functionalities of the system in a very much centralized way, but they're moving to the grid edge right now, which means that all the roles and all the functions of an energy system are actually being brought all the way to the level of the machine or the home scale system. So there's production, transportation, conversion, storage, all the way to use. And the more of that you can actually incorporate within your own premises, the more independent you're going to be of decisions that are made above your head. So I would definitely agree with both Mike and Mez. Go for solar, because that's, in the end, all the energy that we can think of is a form of solar energy. So cut out the middleman and go for solar, and try and use as much of that solar within your own premises, which means complete that system with storage.
And what other types of renewable energy sources are there? You know, there's solar, there's wind, there's battery. What are the sort of different options out there?
So the other options, really, the next one beyond solar and wind is geothermal. Geothermal to date has only really worked in areas that are volcanoes, more or less. So it works well in places like and so on, but there's a lot of people working on actually taking the technology developed for fracking, for producing shale oil and shale gas, and using that to make lower cost, large scale geothermal electricity systems. There's also passive geothermal for homes and buildings. It's a slightly different thing. So that's a real technology coming along. And then the next ones beyond that there's a lot of efforts, or I should say hydropower is actually the largest renewable on Earth right now, but it's sort of stagnant. But there's also efforts on run-of-river hydro, small-scale hydro, and there's a lot of people putting effort into various sorts of ocean power, wave power, tidal, ocean current, but none of those has really come to maturity.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that. We've got another question here from Kamlin Reddy, and I think, Mark, if you want to give it a first go, who's asking, Africa has some of the biggest cobalt mines, and we're strategically located for a streamlined value chain. Are we aware of any storage business initiatives in Africa, specifically SSA?
Well, I think that I'm definitely not the expert, unfortunately, on this one. We focus on getting the systems once they're fully built to the customer, and that's enough of a challenge in itself. I think there's in Ethiopia is one place that I think is kind of on the cutting edge of bringing more complex industrial processes into a place where previously that hasn't been done. I think that the very kind of complex beneficiation, from the raw minerals to batteries is quite a way off at this stage. I'm certainly not aware of any initiatives, but I might be wrong. I don't know, Mez, if you've heard of any.
No, I don't know of any. I mean, I think if you look at other countries around the world that have substantial deposits of cobalt or lithium, you see some efforts, like Chile, for instance, you see some efforts not to make the entire battery, but you can go from the raw material to making one of the electrodes, for instance, and have some value add. And certainly places like Australia are doing that, but I haven't heard of anything really happening in a significant way in Africa.
What about Tesla and Elon Musk with his battery factories, his gigabit factories that he's building?
Yeah, so Tesla just announced another, $1 billion plus gigafactory in Texas. They've got one. They've got more than one in China now. The world overall, if you look at just batteries, we've gone from Elon building the first gigafactory. Now we have more than 120 planned gigafactories to be up and running by 2030. And that also means that these factories have to secure supply for elements like lithium, cobalt, nickel, and so on. So the scale of investment is just staggering.
Very interesting. Arash, do you want to comment on that as well?
Yes, I may try and do this briefly. So the thing with electricity is that it's very hard and very expensive to store, no matter what way you're going to put it. So the easiest way to deal with electricity is use it when it's there. But there's so what we've done in the past couple of years was we started with the design for smart multi-commodity grids, where we're interconnecting grids for molecules like gases, like hydrogen, for example, with electricity networks. And the moment you do that, you're going to get conversion points where you're going to convert electricity into some gas, might be hydrogen, might be something else, might be some acid form or whatever. And that is far more easy and far more cheap to store at a larger scale. You can even store heat. It's very hard to convert that back into electricity in an efficient way, but if your demand is going to be for heating or cooling, you're fine with that. So I think that we're gonna see a staggering increase in the market for energy storage outside of storing electricity. So that's going to be a market for conversion, and that's going to be a market for storing molecules.
Interesting. And we've got a follow-on question here from Silizele Mafika, who's asking, care to touch on the capital outlay required for installing alternative energy infrastructure? You know, if we had to go solar in South Africa and that's the best route, there is still quite a large cost to getting that. It seems to provide a barrier, even though the long-term payout is significant. Do you guys want to comment on that? You know, should you put in the investment and pay it back over time? What are your thoughts on that? Starting with Michael.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think that the question is needs to be looked at from two perspectives. The one is for the individual, you know, whether or not it makes sense for the individual to go distributed and place solar panels on their roof and install batteries. And really it comes down to what the current cost of grid electricity is versus, you know, what you would pay for the financed cost of your solar and batteries. At the moment in South Africa, if you just did that simple comparison, it would be cheaper to stay on the grid, but in many cases it would make sense to at least install solar panels and substitute some of your load that you're drawing from the grid. But I think that the other question, which is an interesting one, is also what should the existing centralized grids do in terms of their choice about what generation source should they use. In South Africa, historically, because of our coal deposits, you know, we have grown up on a very, very coal-rich energy generation source. It's something like 95% of our energy is from coal, and as a result, we are a very, very dirty emitter. And we also are now suffering as a result because we have a number of very expensive power stations which need to be maintained on an ongoing basis, and it's hugely expensive to do that. Now, Mez, again, is the expert on this, and I've learned a lot from his work at looking at the levelized cost of new build renewables versus the ongoing cost of just operating the existing plant. So maybe, Mez, you can give a more detailed description of that, but I think that's the key thing for policymakers at least.
Yeah, that's right. And I would say, so the levelized cost, or the cost of electricity sort of, you know, averaged out over the lifetime of the plant, is a thing that people really look at now, because very, very few people, businesses, utilities, homeowners, pay cash to build renewables. It's just not how it's done. Instead, these projects are financed. And so because it's financed, you have, instead of a big lump sum capital cost, you have what is your monthly cost, if you will, and what is the number of units of electricity divided by that monthly cost. And so you end up with what's your cost per kilowatt hour. And in many cases, certainly in South Africa, that cost is below the fuel cost of loading coal into a coal power plant. And so that's the really disruptive moment. Now in South Africa, I think at the distributed level, financing is less available, but I see that as a business opportunity as well in South Africa to close that gap, to help solar then scale at the distributed level, but also to build a robust business.
So if you were an entrepreneur today, Mez, in South Africa, you're saying you would go try get into this distributed model?
I think it's quite legitimate. I mean, I think in the US, Elon Musk's cousin created a company called SolarCity that then got bought by Tesla. And SolarCity didn't build any technology. SolarCity just went to homeowners who wanted to put solar on their roof, who before this had to pay cash. And so instead of paying thousands of dollars up front, we will put this solar on your roof for $0 down, and you will just pay us for the number of units of electricity you use. And on the back end, SolarCity raised finance to pay for those projects. And that business model has now been successful in Mexico, it's successful in India, it's successful in China. And so that, in a way, that's sort of what Mike is doing for the totally off-grid market. But for the on-grid home market or the on-grid business market, I think that's a huge opportunity as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. We've got a question here for Arash or Ramez from Kiran Naidu, who's asking, do you foresee any return for nuclear? Nuclear power is a great source of energy that we don't really understand, right? Arash, do you want to start with that?
Who wants to go first? Yeah, it's so the big nuclear question. So if you're looking at it from an engineering standpoint, nuclear it's clean. It's there's hardly any CO2 emissions. But to build a nuclear power plant today is gonna not only is it going to take you around 15 to 20 years to set it up, but it's also going to cost you around $9 billion if you're calculating everything, and then still you don't know what to do with the waste. And if you're looking at the cost development curve of alternatives to nuclear from renewable resources like sun, then business-wise, I would say it's never going to be a good decision, because you're going to be outrun by so many other technologies that are on the rise right now. And not only that, but if you're looking at any form of energy that requires some form of combustion, then there's an energy return on energy invested that is below 1. So with a coal-fired plant, for example, you're throwing in coal, then you're setting that on fire, and then you're going to get a part of that energetic potential out. So let's say it's 70%, so then the energy return on energy invested is going to be 0.7. With a solar panel, it's entirely different, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. A solar panel is going to yield around 15 times the amount of energy that it costs to manufacture and set up. So that means that energetically also, I would always go for renewables. So business-wise, renewables, energetically, renewables.
Thanks. Mez, do you want to also comment on that?
I'm not worried about the energetic side of that, but the cost side, Arash is completely right on. It's gotten more expensive over time to build nuclear reactors. So where we have nuclear reactors around the world, we should leave them running as long as is safely possible, because they are already built baseload clean electricity. But it's very hard. The average nuclear project has a cost overrun and schedule delay of more than 100%. And so it's just a lot cheaper to build solar and wind than it is to build nuclear at this point in most of the world.
Awesome, thanks for that. We're going to go to our next question, which is from Lee Naidu, who's asking, I saw in the news today that a new fusion reactor has begun construction. How long until fusion becomes mainstream? Fusion energy. Who wants to take that one?
Well, the fusion joke, right? The great thing about fusion is it's only 10 years away, but it's been only 10 years away for 80 years. So we don't know. I've seen fusion happen. I've seen, there's multiple fusion startups, but nobody has yet achieved net energy gain, getting more energy out than you put in. And certainly no one has a plan for how to get a fusion reactor at a reasonable size to be cheap, even if they do get that net energy gain. So we'll see.
Awesome. And then I think we're going to go to our last question, just for all of the panelists to close out on. What other insights or what other things can we do in South Africa to try help solve this energy crisis? I know we've given a lot of great solutions and great insights. What else can be done, and how do we? What advice would you give to our people in power around how to handle our energy crisis? And maybe we can start with Arash. And we'll end with Michael.
Well, thank you. That's a big question to end with. One of the big holdbacks of the energy revolution in Africa is the cost of capital. Because globally, the cost of capital is rather low, but in many cases in Africa, you're going to see interest rates between 8 and I've even seen 25%. And as long as the cost of capital is that high, it's going to be very hard for investors to get a good return, and for users to invest into solutions that are going to be lasting for them based on renewable energy. So cost of capital has to come down, and we'll have to find ways for that. Second is that there's an amazing opportunity in Africa because of lack of physical grids. So there's no sunken cost dilemmas. There's no stranded assets that we've been heavily investing into that we'll have to get back first. So that means that every step that you take in Africa is actually a major step forward. And just as Michael was so, I mean, I really love the work that you're doing, because the moment you're bringing electrical light to a family in sub-Saharan Africa, their lives change drastically, and suddenly you're endowed with so many opportunities to make more out of your life, simply because of the fact that there's a clean and safe and very cheap way to do something after sunset, like reading books, charging your smartphone, read Wikipedia, watch films on YouTube, and learn about robotics or artificial intelligence or whatever job you're going to be doing. And this is really changing lives. So I would really, for those who are in power, empower the Africans to make their own, because that will eventually revolutionize Africa.
Thanks so much for that. That was really inspiring. Mez, over to you.
Yeah, I'd say for South Africa in particular, I think you cannot separate energy policy from industrial policy, from jobs, from poverty. These things are interrelated. And South Africa has a jobs crisis that is maybe even bigger than the energy crisis. And the way to solve these is in conjunction, which is to use South Africa's abundance of wind and solar to make electricity super cheap, have other policies to attract industry to South Africa to take advantage of that super cheap electricity, and use that as a way to create more jobs and employ more South Africans. But that's going to require not just building energy, that's going to require job training and upskilling, and it's going to require the government to have industrial policy and seek out these energy-intensive industries that can employ South Africans and make use of the abundant and cheap wind and solar in the country.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. Mark, over to you for some closing comments.
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously, our expertise is in the distributed side, and in South Africa, it's fairly obvious, making it easier for private producers by giving larger licenses would be a great step, which I think everyone in the industry is crying out for. And secondly, the introduction of policies like net metering, which have enabled distributed generation to take off in the rest of the world. It's something which the country can do. It's got an amazing grid asset, and that really will revolutionize things. And then on the grid side, people also forget that South Africa had one of the best independent power producers procurement programs, the REAP. It was really world renowned in the way that it was carried out. There's been a lot of bad news and bad press about the way that the government has done procurement over the last decade or so, but that was a really stellar example. On top of that, in the Northern Cape, we've got some of the best solar and the best wind resources of anywhere in the world. And, with a really large and growing population, both within South Africa and in the region, the opportunity to really become a powerhouse through delivering some of the lowest cost energy in the world through this private procurement and from these resources is a huge one, and something which the government should really be taking seriously again.
No, thanks so much for that. I feel like we've had a discussion with 3 modern-day Nikola Teslas. Thank you to our amazing panel guests. It's been really an amazing show and really insightful. I hope everyone Enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing your insights. Keep investing, keep disrupting, and keep evolving energy for all of us to have a better future. Don't go anywhere. We've got our giveaway section up next where we're going to be giving away The Future is Faster Than You Think, as well as a tech hacks surprise for you at the end of the show. Thanks so much to our panelists. Now it's time for the Share the Tech Love section of the show. This season we have some amazing prizes and gifts to give away, and tonight we're going to be giving away 3 copies of Peter Diamandis' new book, The Future is Faster Than You Think. This is an incredible book that talks about how these technologies are converging and evolving and just accelerating as they converge. I hope whoever wins, you're going to enjoy it. Perrin, can we please spin the randomizer? And our winners are Lizzie Mokhali, Liran Asnus, and Cheryl Calopen. Congrats to you guys. You have just won a copy of Peter Diamandis' new book, The Future is Faster Than You Think. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. There are many solutions we need to pursue if we're going to solve this energy crisis, and I really hope you got some knowledge on what we can all do to make a positive difference. We'll be back next week with an awesome episode on the changing face of AI and how AI is now becoming more mainstream and is completely enhancing and augmenting many industries from healthcare, manufacturing to finance. We have an amazing panel next week with Dr. Vivian Ming, who's the founder of Socos AI and is also the Singularity University faculty member on cognitive neuroscience and one of the world's leading experts on artificial intelligence, as well as Mark Nasilla, who's the Chief Analytics Officer at FNB Risk and has made some amazing advances in the field of AI and finance. You can go to the website to start registering for the changing face of AI and put it in your calendar to get informed about all the updates and stand a chance to win in the Share the Tech Love giveaway next week. We've got one last section for tonight. Each week we're going to end on some incredible tech hacks to help you in your life. Today we're going to give you a few simple energy tech hacks to implement to make in your own life to make a big difference. Here are 5 simple energy tech hacks that will make a substantial contribution to your household energy conservation and therefore substantial savings to your pocket. So listen up. Start with a home energy audit. By doing an energy assessment, you can determine where and how your home is losing energy. You can do your own basic audit of locating and sealing air leaks, insulation level checks, and inspecting heating and cooling equipment, and replacing light bulbs. Hook yourself up with an energy monitor. There are plenty to choose from online. Most options connect up to your smartphone, which makes it easy to manage. The monitor will help you understand which appliances are draining energy. The appliances in sleep mode are the silent killers. Alternatively, hire in a pro because you're guaranteed to make back that spend on all the savings you'll make. Hack 2. Keep your freezer full. Most people do not know this fact, but keeping your freezer full uses less energy than when it's empty. When it's full, there is less room for warm air, so fill up your freezer with bags of ice to ensure the temperature stays low. Hack 3. Reduce pressure on your power shower. High pressure power showers use up more water than a bath would. Reduce the pressure on your power shower and save some cash. Hack 4. Use cold water to wash your clothes. 90% of a washing machine's expenditure is used on heating water. So just use cold water and save energy. Hack 5. Use the correct plate on your stove when cooking. Finally, using the larger plates to heat small meals wastes a lot of energy. Be sure to use an appropriately sized pan so that you use the right amount of energy. That's it for the tech hacks, helping you hack your electricity woes and save energy. Thanks so much to all of you for watching. Join our social media pages, as well as like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Mann Let's future-proof Africa together and keep smiling.